Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, or MCAS, is a disorder where your body's immune system goes haywire, releasing chemicals that trigger widespread inflammation and hypersensitivity. Now, the problem? The conventional medical approach is treating the symptoms and ignoring the root causes. Now, in this video, you'll discover just that, the underlying root causes of Mast Cell Activation Syndrome. Hi, I'm Dr. Peter Kahn, board-certified chiropractic neurologist and certified in functional medicine. Let me show you how to master your health. Now, the causes of Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, or MCAS, is officially unknown. However, in my 20 years of experience working with thousands of chronic and complex cases, I've discovered there are several underlying root causes that are either not officially recognized or are insufficiently addressed. Now, Mast Cell Activation Syndrome has various root causes that are not often identified in a conventional medical model. Now, these root causes include mucosal inflammation, overexposure to environmental allergens, chronic infections, immune system imbalance or Th2 dominance, and decreased parasympathetic function. I'm going to go over each one in turn. First, mucosal inflammation. Now, the mucosa is describing this lining of your body that are exposed to the outside world. If you look inside your mouth, you're going to see this pink, moist tissue. That's an example of a mucosa, mucosal surface. Now, that pink, moist tissue that's inside your mouth, it's also in your sinuses, it's also in your lung, it's also in your gut, which is from your mouth, that tube, go through the GI tract all the way at the other end in the anus. That's all part of this mucosal lining of the gut. And in the urinary tract, like the vaginal tract and the urinary tract, these are all mucosal surfaces. Now, because these mucosal surfaces are exposed to the outer environment, then they're lined with immune cells that are capable of inducing inflammation, because these mucosal surfaces are the exposure to the outside world. So they're lined with immune cells that are able to trigger inflammation to help you to get rid of potential pathogens and allergens. Now, because they are inflammation factories, they have to be, because they're there to protect you. Because they're inflammation factories, if the balance is skewed to where you have an overexpression or overexposure to allergens, then you're going to have an exuberant or excessive inflammatory response associated with these type of exposure and allergic response. Now, specifically in the gut mucosa is really good at making inflammation because it has to identify the things that you eat, if there's any germs or dietary proteins that need to be aware of. So the gut is very exquisitely sensitive to any type of inflammation stimuli. So the balance between the beneficial and the harmful bacteria in your GI tract, in your colon, kind of controls the level of expression of inflammation response. Meaning, if you have too much harmful bacteria, but not enough of beneficial bacteria in your gut microbiome, that can cause your immune system to be more aggressive and more sensitive. And a more aggressive and sensitive immune system means it's going to pick up more environmental allergen and make you more sensitive to it. Where normally you may not be so sensitive, but now you are because of this gut dysbiosis situation. So that's an example of how mucosal inflammation, inflamed mucosa, inflamed sinus, inflamed lung, inflamed gut can lead to increased mast cell activation. Now, overexposure to environmental allergens. Now, there's a lot of things in our environment that can trigger mast cell release of histamine and various mediators and causing allergic symptoms. These environmental allergens can include things like mold spores, and mycotoxin or mold toxins, can include like pollen, right? Like seasonal allergy, can include pet danders, can include particulate matter. These are dust, small particle-sized dust that you may not even be able to see, but they're there nonetheless. That when you breathe it in, that can be a trigger for mast cell release. And then endocrine disrupting chemical, EDC. What are these? These are chemicals that are man-made that have an impact on our hormonal system. That's why they're called endocrine disrupting chemical. They can disrupt your endocrine function. These are things like BPA, plastics, fire retardant material, pesticides and herbicides and so forth. These chemicals have been shown to be able to induce mast cell release of the mast cell chemicals such as histamine. and also stimulate your immune system in a way that produces more inflammation. Okay, so these environmental allergens can definitely lead to mast cell release. Now, chronic infections, such as from parasites, bacteria, and candida, can also cause mast cell release. Parasites are interesting because we think of parasites as tapeworms and roundworms and so forth. Now, they can be those things, but they can also be microscopic in the form of amoebas and protozoas. They're microscopic organisms that nonetheless have a parasitic relationship, and they can trigger the release of eosinophils, and eosinophils and mast cells, they co-stimulate each other to create this Th2 dominant immune system response that skew your immune system in such a way that causes your mast cell to over-release the mediators such as histamine. Now, there's a previous video that I made about the physiology of mast cells, eosinophils, and how the mast cell actually works. That's a part 1 of this series on mast cell activation, so I encourage you to go watch it. Now, the next thing is the immune system imbalance. Now, your immune system has many different immune cells, and particularly there's 2 main branches. Just like everything in the body is always a gas pedal and a brake pedal, right? You have the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system. So you can get into a fight or flight state, but then you can calm down to a relaxed state. Everything in the body is all about yin and the yang, right? Being able to balance each other. Your immune system is kind of like that. It has a T helper 1 immune response and a T helper 2 immune response. The T helper 1 immune response are comprised of innate immune cells such as neutrophils, macrophages, natural killer cells. Their job is to go attack pathogens and kill them, right? They're the first line of defense. Now, you also have the T helper 2 immune response, and the T helper 2 immune response is primarily responsible for adaptive immunity, or making antibody to memorize who the bad guys are, so the next time, the subsequent exposure to the same bad guy, your body will be able to ramp up this antibody response really fast and be able to kill the pathogen before they start to take hold. Now, the mast cells and eosinophils are part of that T helper 2 immune response. And what happens is there are situations where, due to either chronic infections or overexposure to environmental toxins or chronic inflammation, that's going to drive your immune system into a T helper 2 immune response, which means that this side of the immune system is working too hard and this side of the immune system is not working hard enough. And when this side is working too hard, which includes the mast cells and eosinophils, that's going to lead to your mast cell excessive activity, which then leads to your chronic allergy, mast cell, histamine symptoms. Okay, so Th2 dominance means your immune system is skewed, causing too much activity on this side. But there's also something on the other side that gets affected. When this side's working too much, like a teeter-totter, this side's not going to be able to work hard enough when you need to. And this side is the side that actually kills infections. So you may end up with a situation where you're chronically inflamed and allergic with this mast cell response, an allergic response, but then you can't finish the fight to kill the pathogen. So you become both infected and inflamed and allergic at the same time. Not a good situation. Some people are stuck in this vicious cycle and their immune system just gets skewed and they can't bring themselves back to homeostasis, and that's why they have this mast cell problem. It's actually a huge driver. This is at the root of the immunological response that can drive someone into this situation in the first place, which is how the immune system is designed and how they can get out of balance. And interestingly, there are many things that can drive your immune system into Th2 dominant situation. So things like head injury, like from a concussion, things like leaky gut can drive a Th2 immune response, things like dysbiosis and parasites, as we talked about earlier, with these chronic infections, environmental toxins, as we talked about earlier, insulin resistance, having blood sugar imbalance, can also create this Th2 dominant response. Chronic inflammation can also cause this skew in the immune system. And then also cortisol, high cortisol due to chronic stress can also create this imbalanced immune system. And even diminished or depleted glutathione. Glutathione is an antioxidant your body naturally produces, but you only make so much in a day. If you use it all up due to chronic infections and toxins, which is what glutathione's job is, to help you with detox, help you with antioxidant activity, help you with immune function, then you can run out of glutathione. Then your body takes the hit instead of the glutathione protecting you like a shield taking the hit. So these are things, and you can see there are many things that can drive the immune system into this Th2 dominant response that can lead to mast cell activation syndrome. Now lastly, decreased parasympathetic function. So in your nervous system, you have the autonomic nervous system. It's divided into two branches. One is the sympathetic branch, which deals with fight or flight response. The other branch is the parasympathetic system, which brings your body back down from stress, puts you in a calm, relaxed state so you can digest food and heal and recover. So decreased parasympathetic response, just like this T helper 1, T helper 2, it's a teeter-totter. The more you're stressed, the less you're going to be relaxed or in a parasympathetic mode. Now, the parasympathetic function is primarily controlled by the vagus nerve, although that's not the only nerve that's in control of that, but it's a major nerve that contributes to a majority of the parasympathetic function. So what happens is when you have mast cell activation syndrome, you're going to have an increased release of the mast cell mediators, including histamine. So you're going to have high histamine. The high histamine is going to cause a lot of your symptoms, like allergies, GI pain and cramps, lethargy, neurological symptoms, skin symptoms like itching. So the histamine can create symptoms, but then the histamine also activates the H3 receptor, histamine 3 receptor. This is a receptor in your brain that can detect histamine. And when you activate the H3 receptor in the central nervous system, you decrease acetylcholine, serotonin, and norepinephrine production. These are neurochemicals, neurotransmitters that serve different function. Acetylcholine help with memory. Serotonin help you with your mood. Norepinephrine help you to be alert. So if high histamine activate the H3 receptors, which decrease these neurotransmitters, then you may have brain fog, you may have depression, you may feel lethargic and lack of energy. So histamine has a neurological response when you have too much of them. Now, the acetylcholine is important because this is a neurotransmitter or neurochemical that helps your vagus nerve to fire. So again, if you have too much histamine, you activate the H3 receptor, you not have enough these neurotransmitters, which then decreases vagus nerve function. Vagus nerve actually can help dampen inflammation through the inflammatory reflex. Neurologically, good vagus nerve function dampens inflammation overall and has a role in dampening mast cells. So if you decrease vagus nerve function, you can dampen the mast cell as well. Then you get more mast cell activation, more histamine, and you can see this is a loop, which means it's a vicious cycle. Okay? So to put this together in a map, these are all tied together. Okay? To summarize, gut inflammation, which means to say mucosal inflammation, right, of any of these mucosal surfaces, but particularly the gut, because your gut lining is much greater surface area than the sinus, than the urinary tract, or the lung. So gut inflammation, it's going to cause mast cell degranulation because within your gut lining, the mucosal surfaces, it's an inflammation factory. And literally, mast cells can degranulate because your gut is inflamed. It's like an alarm signal that just calls hell break loose. Mast cells going to degranulate, release histamine. When it releases histamine, it's going to, as we said earlier, it's going to activate the H3 receptor and decrease acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter. Vagus nerve activity is dependent on good amount of acetylcholine. So if you have less acetylcholine, you're going to have decreased vagus nerve activity. When you decrease vagus nerve activity, not only are you going to decrease everything that the vagus nerve touches, which is digestion, like intestinal motility, moving food through your GI tract so you can have good bowel movement and not be constipated. Good vagus nerve helps you to secrete digestive enzymes so you can digest food. But vagus nerve also is involved in this inflammatory reflex where it neurologically dampens inflammation. Okay? Through the dampening macrophage, tumor necrosis factor alpha release. So macrophages are a specific type of white blood cells that can release this particular cytokine called tumor necrosis alpha, which triggers an inflammatory response. Vagus nerve can decrease the amount of these inflammatory cytokine messages sent by the macrophages. So if you have less vagus nerve activity, you're going to have more inflammatory cytokine activity, which means that you're going to be more inflamed. And that inflammation can come back and trigger more gut inflammation. And now we have a loop, a vicious cycle. Now, not only gut inflammation can cause problem in the gut and everything downstream, but gut inflammation can also cause brain inflammation. And then brain inflammation can come back and cause more gut inflammation. So there's that brain-gut connection. And then gut inflammation also causes systemic inflammation. And that systemic inflammation in your whole entire body can come back and cause more gut inflammation. And the systemic inflammation can cause brain inflammation and cause systemic inflammation. So basically you have a three-way cycle where inflammation can start in the gut, but it does not stay in the gut. It starts to spread and affect the brain and affect you systemically, which then all further contribute to this mast cell activation syndrome. Now you know the root causes of MCAS. Let me know in the comments which one of the root causes or all of them are causing your MCAS. Now, if you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you for watching. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video.